$500,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. If you had $500,000 sitting in a retirement account, most people would not look at that number and think, that's basically nothing. They would think, okay, I have something real here. And they would be right. But here is where retirement gets tricky. Retirement does not spend impressive balances. Retirement spends monthly income. Once you turn $500,000 into monthly income, the conversation changes fast. That number can feel like a mountain while you are still working, but after the paycheck stops, that mountain has to turn into monthly bills. You have groceries, utilities, insurance, taxes, healthcare, car repairs, home repairs, and inflation. That is the shift. You stop asking, how big is the account? You start asking, what can this account safely pay me every month? So today we are answering the question directly. Who can actually retire on $500,000? Not who can technically leave work for a few months. Not who can make a spreadsheet work by assuming nothing bad ever happens. Who can actually retire on $500,000 without every surprise bill becoming a problem? And the answer is not nobody. That is too dramatic. But the answer is also not, sure, you'll be fine. That is how people end up learning retirement math the hard way. The real answer is this. $500,000 can work for some households, but it only works when several other pieces are already doing heavy lifting. Social Security has to matter. Housing has to be controlled. Debt has to be low. Healthcare timing has to be understood. Spending has to be realistic. And the plan needs margin. Brutal does not mean hopeless. Brutal means we count the parts people usually leave out. Let's start with the headline number. $500,000. If you use a simple 4% withdrawal idea, that gives you $20,000 in the first year. That is about $1,667 per month. That is before taxes, fees, and any adjustment for risk. That is the first big reality check. $500,000 may only create about $1,600 a month in retirement income. And yes, $1,600 a month matters. That can pay a lot of bills. But it is not a full retirement by itself unless your expenses are extremely low. This is where a lot of people get surprised. They think of $500,000 as wealth. Retirement treats it like a paycheck, and a $1,667 monthly paycheck does not feel the same as seeing a $500,000 balance on a screen. The balance looks strong. The monthly income is where the pressure shows up. Now, some people will say, fine, I'll withdraw more. And technically, you can. You can take $30,000 a year from a $500,000 portfolio. That is $2,500 a month. You can take $40,000 a year. That is $3,333 a month. You can take more than that. But higher withdrawals come with a cost. They raise the chance that the money runs down too fast. And that risk gets worse if the market has a bad stretch early in retirement. That is the danger zone. Retiring with $500,000 is not just about average returns. It is about timing. If the market does well early, the plan may breathe. If the market drops early and you still need withdrawals, you are selling from a smaller account while the account is already hurt. That can damage a retirement plan. You are pulling money out at the exact moment the account needs time to recover. Could the plan still work? Maybe. Would you want to build your whole retirement around maybe? Probably not. But here's where the math gets uncomfortable. The $500,000 is rarely the whole retirement. For many people, Social Security is the foundation, and this is where the plan can either start to work or start to crack. Let's use rough 2026 numbers. The estimated average monthly Social Security benefit for retired workers is about $2,071. For an aged couple where both people receive benefits, the estimated average is about $3,208 per month. So now we can build the retirement paycheck. We have a single retiree with an average Social Security, about $2,071. Portfolio withdrawal from $500,000 at 4%, about $1,667. Total gross monthly income, about $3,738. That sounds much better than $1,667. Now we are not talking about $500,000 by itself. We are talking about Social Security plus a portfolio. But gross income is not the same as spendable income. Gross income is the number before the system takes its pieces out. Medicare premiums may come out, taxes may apply, and you still have regular healthcare costs like prescriptions, dental work, co-pays, and other out-of-pocket bills. Medicare is important. Medicare is not free, and it does not cover everything. The standard Medicare Part B premium in 2026 is $202.90 per month for most people. So if you are a single retiree starting with roughly $3,738 gross per month, Part B alone takes about $203 of that. Now you're around $3,535. And that is before taxes, prescriptions, rent or mortgage, property taxes, food, utilities, transportation, and all the normal bills that keep showing up. This is the part the headline number hides. $500,000 plus Social Security can be workable, but it is not automatically comfortable. Now let's run the married couple version. Say both spouses receive Social Security. Together they receive around the estimated average aged couple amount of $3,208 per month. Add a 4% withdrawal from $500,000. That is another $1,667 per month. Total gross monthly income, about $4,875. That can work better, but now there are two people, two Medicare Part B premiums, two sets of healthcare needs, two people using food, utilities, transportation, and prescriptions. At $202.90 each, Medicare Part B for two people is about $406 per month. So that $4,875 becomes about $4,469 before taxes and other healthcare costs. Again, not impossible, but not casual. This is the difference between technically retiring and sustainably retiring. Technically retiring means the first year can be squeezed until it works. Sustainably retiring means the plan can survive year 5 or year 12. It can survive the roof repair, the market drop, the car replacement, the higher property tax bill, and one spouse living longer than expected. Living longer is a good thing. It just has to be paid for. Now let's add the hidden cost stack. First, housing. This is probably the biggest divider between who can retire on $500,000 and who cannot. If the house is paid off and property taxes and insurance are manageable, $500,000 has a fighting chance. If rent is low, stable, or subsidized, same idea. But if there is still a mortgage, especially a large one, the math changes immediately. A $1,500 monthly mortgage is $18,000 a year. That is almost the entire 4% withdrawal from a $500,000 portfolio. Think about that. If your portfolio can reasonably produce about $20,000 a year and the mortgage costs $18,000 a year, then the portfolio is basically working full-time for the house. It is not funding travel. It is not funding health care. It is not funding emergencies. It is mostly covering the mortgage. A mortgage in retirement is not automatically bad. Some people have low rates, strong pensions, large cash reserves, and plenty of income. But for a $500,000 retirement plan, a mortgage can take up almost the whole portfolio paycheck. The second cost stack is debt. Car payments matter. Credit card balances matter. Personal loans matter. Parent plus loans matter. Debt that felt okay while working can feel heavy after paychecks stop. A $600 car payment is $7,200 a year. That is more than 4 months of the portfolio income under the 4% math. A $300 credit card payment is $3,600 a year. A $700 combined debt load is $8,400 a year. That is not just a payment. That is money your retirement has to produce before groceries even get a chance to speak. This is why two people with the same $500,000 can have completely different retirement realities. One person has a paid-off house, no car payment, no credit card debt, and modest hobbies. Another person has a mortgage, 2 cars, credit card debt, and adult kids who still need help. Same $500,000, different retirement. Healthcare timing is the third cost stack. If someone retires at 65 or later, Medicare is available. Still not free, but available. If someone retires before 65, they need a healthcare bridge. That bridge might come from a spouse's plan, retiree coverage, COBRA, ACA coverage, or another source. The key is simple. That cost has to be counted before retirement starts. Retiring at 62 with $500,000 can look possible until you add 3 years of health care before Medicare. That does not mean retiring before 65 is impossible. It means the health care cost needs to be in the plan before you leave work. Fourth is taxes. Not all retirement money spends the same. If the $500,000 is in a traditional 401k or traditional IRA, withdrawals are generally taxable income. That means the account balance is not always the same as the amount you get to spend. If some of the money is in Roth accounts, that may be different. If some is in a regular brokerage account, that may be different too. The account type matters. A $500,000 traditional IRA is not the same as $500,000 in a checking account. That's because the IRS is not a silent partner. Taxes have to be counted. And later in retirement, tax-deferred accounts may force withdrawals through required minimum distributions. Under current rules, those generally begin at age 73. That may not be the biggest problem for someone with $500,000, but it still matters. The timing of withdrawals can affect taxes, Social Security taxation, and sometimes Medicare costs. The plain English version is this: where your money sits affects how much of it you actually keep. The fifth cost to take into account is inflation. Inflation is the quiet problem because it does not send one giant bill. It just makes every normal bill a little worse. Groceries go up, insurance goes up, utilities go up, property taxes go up, car repairs get more expensive. And if retirement lasts 20 or 30 years, inflation can turn a plan that looked fine in year 1 into a tight squeeze later. That is why a plan cannot only answer, "Can I afford retirement this year?" It has to answer, "Can I afford being retired for decades?" Now let's look at who $500,000 can actually work for. First, it can work better for someone with a paid-off home or very low housing costs. This is the big one. If housing is controlled, the whole retirement plan has more oxygen. Imagine a single retiree with $500,000, average Social Security, no mortgage, no car payment, and spending around $3,000 to $3,500 per month before bigger surprises. That person may be in range. Not rich, not flying first class to Europe because a credit card commercial made it look peaceful, but in range. The portfolio fills the gap between Social Security and monthly expenses. The key is that fixed costs are low enough that the portfolio is not being drained just to keep the lights on. Second, it can work for a couple with 2 Social Security checks and controlled spending. A couple receiving around $3,208 per month from Social Security, plus around $1,667 from portfolio withdrawals, has roughly $4,875 gross per month before healthcare premiums and taxes. If their house is paid off, debt is low, and spending is modest, that may work. Again, not luxury, but possible, especially if they have some flexibility. Maybe travel is domestic instead of international. Maybe cars are kept longer. Maybe the house is smaller. Maybe restaurant spending is planned instead of automatic. There is a big difference between choosing a simpler retirement and being forced into panic cuts later. One is control. The other is what happens when the math was too tight from the start. Third, it can work for someone with pension income. A pension changes the math because it adds another income floor. Social Security plus pension plus a $500,000 portfolio can be very different from Social Security plus portfolio alone. If a retiree has a $1,500 monthly pension, that is $18,000 a year of income the portfolio does not have to produce. That can turn $500,000 from tight into reasonable, depending on spending. Fourth, It can work for someone willing to keep earning part-time income. Even $1,000 a month from part-time work can reduce portfolio pressure by $12,000 a year. That is huge. For a $500,000 portfolio, $12,000 is more than half of the 4% withdrawal amount. Now, not everyone can or wants to work in retirement. Health, age, job availability, caregiving, and burnout all matter. But from a math standpoint, even modest earned income can give the portfolio breathing room. This is not about glorifying hustle culture at age 67. It is just acknowledging that part-time income can be a powerful bridge. Now let's talk about who is in danger with $500,000. First, people retiring before Medicare without a clear health care plan. That is not automatically impossible, but it is not a casual detail. If the healthcare bridge costs more than expected, the portfolio may get hit hard early, and early withdrawals can do the most damage. Second, people with large fixed expenses, mortgage, car payments, credit cards, support for adult children, high insurance premiums, high property taxes. These expenses matter because retirement income usually has less wiggle room than a paycheck. While working, someone might cover a surprise bill with overtime, a bonus, a raise, or just another year of work. In retirement, the money has to come from somewhere. And if fixed expenses already claimed most of the income, surprises go straight to the portfolio or the credit card. Third, people who think $500,000 means they can spend like they have $500,000. This is the psychological trap. A big balance can create false confidence. Someone sees $500,000 and thinks, I can finally relax. And yes, they should feel proud. Saving $500,000 is not nothing. That took years of discipline, or at least years of avoiding a lot of expensive mistakes. But the balance still has a job. It has to last. It has to support withdrawals. It has to absorb bad markets. It has to deal with inflation. It has to be there when the retiree is 78, not just 66. This is the part most people miss. $500,000 is a serious achievement, but it is not permission to ignore the monthly math. Now, let's build a household case study. Meet Mark and Linda. They are both 66. They have $500,000 saved in traditional retirement accounts. They both claim Social Security, and together they receive about $3,200 per month. They own a home, but it is not fully paid off. Their mortgage, taxes, and insurance together are $1,450 per month. They have one car payment of $525. Medicare, Part B premiums for both of them are about $406 per month total. They also pay for Medicare-related costs, prescriptions, dental, and out-of-pocket health care. Let's keep the math simple. Their gross monthly income looks like this. Social Security, $3,200. Portfolio withdrawal at 4%. $1,667. Total, $4,867. That is the number on paper. Now we have to turn it into money they can actually spend. Let's start with the obvious fixed costs. Housing, $1,450. Car payment, $525. Medicare, Part B, $406. Utilities, phones, and internet, $450. That is $2,831 gone before food, gas, insurance, taxes, prescriptions, home repairs, clothing, gifts, travel, vet bills, and helping family. They have about $2,036 left before all of that. Now add groceries. For two people, maybe $800 to $1,000 a month, depending on where they live and how careful they are. Now they are down around $1,100. Gas and auto insurance? Maybe $350. Now they are around $750. Prescriptions, copays, dental, and household supplies? Another $300 or $400. Now maybe $350 is left. And we have not talked about taxes on retirement withdrawals, home maintenance, property tax increases, car repairs, replacing the vehicle, travel to see grandkids, or the basic human desire to occasionally do something enjoyable. This is where the plan stops feeling like retirement. It starts feeling like bill management. So, do you think Mark and Linda are doomed? No, they're not, and the plan remains tight. The danger is not that the first month fails. The danger is that the fifth surprise succeeds. The roof repair, the transmission, the dental bill, the adult child who needs help, the market drop, the insurance increase, the prescription that suddenly costs more. A plan that only works if nothing breaks is not a plan. Now change one thing. Suppose Mark and Linda have no mortgage. Then housing drops from $1,450 to maybe $650 for property taxes, insurance, and maintenance reserves. That frees up $800 per month. Now the plan breathes. They can build cash reserves. They can handle small surprises. They can reduce withdrawals in bad market years. They can say yes to a modest trip without having to rework the entire month. Same $500,000. Same Social Security, different fixed expenses. That is the lesson. The brutal part is not always the savings balance. The brutal part is how much of the retirement paycheck is already spoken for before the month begins. So who can actually retire on $500,000? Here is the clean version. A single person may be able to retire on $500,000 if Social Security is decent, housing is very low, debt is minimal, health care is planned, spending is modest, and there is cash set aside for emergencies. A couple may be able to retire on $500,000 if they have 2 Social Security checks, controlled housing, low debt, realistic health care costs, and flexible spending. Someone with a pension may be in a much stronger position. Someone willing and able to work part-time may have more room. Someone living in a low-cost area may have a much better shot. But $500,000 gets dangerous when it is asked to do everything, such as replace a paycheck, cover a mortgage, fund health care before Medicare, pay off debt, support adult children, absorb inflation, provide travel, survive bad markets, and still be there for 20 or 30 years. That is too many jobs for one pile of money. Even a respectable pile. This is not about telling people they cannot retire. It is about finding the version of retirement that does not require fantasy math. Maybe the answer is working one more year. Maybe it is paying off the car first. Maybe it is downsizing. Maybe it is relocating. Maybe it is delaying Social Security. Maybe it is taking Social Security earlier because the household needs the income and the trade-off makes sense. Maybe it is part-time work for the first 3 years. Maybe it is building a larger cash cushion before leaving work. Maybe it is cutting the fixed expenses that would otherwise follow you into retirement. The point is not that one move is right for everyone. The point is that $500,000 can be enough only when the surrounding math supports it. So here is the real-life absorption test. Ask 10 questions before treating $500,000 as a retirement green light. Can this plan work in a normal year? Can it work in a bad year? Can it work if healthcare costs more than expected? Can it work if insurance, taxes, or housing costs rise? Can it work if markets disappoint early? Can it work if one spouse dies first and household income changes? Can it work if family needs help? Can it work without adding credit card debt? Can it work without panic-cutting basic life? And can it work for 20 or 30 years, not just the first year? That is the test. Retirement affordability is not whether you can squeeze the first year until it behaves. Retirement affordability is whether the plan can survive real life without destroying your flexibility. $500,000 is not a failure. It is not nothing. It is a serious retirement asset. However, it is not magic. It is a tool. And like any tool, it only works if you do not ask it to do a job it was never built to handle. So the better question is not, is $500,000 enough for retirement? The better question is, what does this $500,000 actually have to pay for? If Social Security covers the floor, housing is controlled, debt is low, health care is counted, and spending is flexible, $500,000 may be enough to build a modest, workable retirement. But if the money has to cover every gap, every bill, every emergency, every debt payment, and every hope you postponed for 30 years, the math gets brutal fast. Possible is not the same as sustainable, and sustainable is the word that matters. So, before asking, "Can I retire on $500,000?" ask the sharper question, "Can my real life safely absorb this plan, or does it only work on paper?" If this made you look at $500,000 differently, subscribe, because the balance is only the headline. The monthly bills are the retirement, and that is the math most people forget to count.